Welcome to Blue Marble Defender story number 28, Bullies in the Swamp. Chapter 1, Sanibel Island. The defenders were in Florida because Mom and Pops were working with the FBI to investigate reports of extraterrestrials carrying off alligators from Lake Okeechobee. This was the family's first morning in their new home in Fort Myers, Florida, and the end-of-the-year holiday season was fast approaching. Rookie rose early, rushed to the living room, but he didn't make it inside. The passageway was blocked by crepe paper ribbons taped from floor to ceiling and left to right. He thought, a typical lame gag by the Christmas elf. Parting the ribbons and looking inside, he saw a beautifully decorated chocolate cake near the menorah. Yep, another nice gift from Hanukkah Harry. Nice that the dudes followed us to Florida as they have everywhere else in the world, he thought. Mom and Pops had adopted the elf and Harry to juice up household fun, and Rookie was happy to play along as the counterpoint to his serious schoolwork and the risky business of defending the planet. Although it was mid-December, the forecast was for warm weather, and as soon as everyone finished breakfast, Pops announced, Mom and I are going to work long hours over the holidays, and we want to get in some sightseeing, some beach time, and relaxation before that work pressure builds. Let's hit the road, okay? The inventor, Thomas Edison's laboratory, was the first destination. The two budding inventors explored the lab Edison worked in through many winters. Its appearance was frozen in the 1940s when Edison, with the encouragement of tire maker Harry Firestone and car maker Henry Ford, was working to invent substitutes for natural rubber tires. Pops explained that Edison's most important invention really wasn't shown in his Fort Myers lab, and the boys learned it was something they hadn't even thought of as an invention. It was the development of the modern research laboratory, the invention factory. At his main laboratory in New Jersey, Edison showed you don't need to be a genius to invent. He documented the steps he followed in personally inventing things, taught them to others, assigned teams to work on problems, and provided the tools, materials, and specialist skills that allowed many teams to efficiently run their projects at the same time. After he turned inventing into a process, then more companies and more people could invent and turn their breakthrough ideas into usable products. After an hour of learning about the Wizard of Menlo Park, Pops aimed everyone toward the car and set off for Sanibel Island on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico. He navigated the busy road southwest of Fort Myers, turned onto the 5-kilometer-long causeway to the island, stopped at a national wildlife refuge, and they enjoyed seeing horseshoe crabs, tortoises, iguanas, armadillos, alligators, coyotes, snakes, pelicans, and many other seabirds. Manatees, that are sometimes called sea cows, got the most attention because of their massive, elongated, round bodies and paddle-like flippers. Docile and defenseless because they have no natural predators, they would have been unexciting in their appearance if they hadn't been so unusual. So unusual they could have been cast in a Star Wars movie. Pops drove up the island to the Mucky Duck, a beachfront restaurant. After eating, Mom and Pops took a walk up the beach while the boys opted to climb on the large tree a hurricane had deposited at water's edge. Hey, it was slippery and tricky climbing, but the challenge made it more fun, and jumping from the limbs into the water really added even more fun. Rookie jogged a few steps down the beach, checking for possible other adventures, while Leo worked on making it to the highest branch of the half-submerged tree. He had just reached it when he heard Rookie call, Tess! Tess! Tess from Otis Reservoir, is that you? Wow, yes it is, came the response. And Rookie, great to see you again. Where's Leo? Hey, Tess, Leo called out from the tree before he jumped down and ran to meet her. What a surprise! I figured you to be up in Massachusetts taking your boat out of the water before it got trapped in ice. Well, that that boat's already stored in the boathouse, but I have another one down here. It's a swamp boat, what people sometimes call an airboat or a fan boat. It has a flat bottom and no propeller, so it can skim over swampy grass in areas like the Everglades. Its fan is really big and it's really noisy, but it can reach 35 miles an hour, faster than you water skied at Otis. Rookie asked, "So Tess, what brought you to Florida?" It may sound weird, but it was physics and astronomy. Lately, I've been intrigued by the idea of cosmic dark matter. Dark matter, yeah. When I learned that only 20% of the universe's mass is visible, I couldn't stop wanting to know what's going on with the other 80%. I mentioned this to one of my uncles. He's an astronomy professor at Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers, and he invited me to attend a class. They have a telescope, and that adds to the fun. By the way, my uncle knows of your father's research and is jealous that I met him when we were invaded up there in Otis by those green blobs. So, great to meet you both here. And the world is still in one piece. So I assume that's because you two have saved it from extraterrestrials a bunch of times, right? Well, Leo chuckled before saying, "Well, I guess we've done our fair share since Otis, but we're happily unemployed just now. Rook and I are down here because Mom and Pops are helping the FBI with an investigation." Tess said, "Well, interesting things do keep showing up in your lives. I have to run now and join my family at a restaurant down the beach. What a great coincidence to meet up with you both. I trust you still have my phone number, so call me sometime and I'll take you out on my fan boat. And remember, you made me an honorary Blue Marble Defender, and I'd be happy to join any assignment you take, just so I can keep up my credentials." Rookie waved and said, "I don't remember honorary being part of your title, Tess. If any new crisis comes our way, you are obliged to answer the call." Chapter 2. Machos, Wimps, and Bullies. The next day, Mom and Pop started their investigation with the FBI, and Leo and Ricky loafed and dipped in their swimming pool. That afternoon, Pop's phone rang, and the boys heard Pop's end of the conversation. "Hey there, Amerigo, what's shaking?" "Ha, that's a coincidence. You wouldn't believe it, but we're here in Florida, too, in Fort Myers." Not that's too much of a coincidence. But gee, I'm afraid the two of us are here on assignment for the FBI, so sorry, no can do. Maybe they've just been hanging around the swimming pool. Here, I'll put the phone on speaker and you can ask them yourself. What happened then was Americo explained he'd been contacted by a nearby friend who owns a chocolate factory. Criminals wanted him to pay money for them to leave him alone and had ruined some of his products. "So," Amerigo said, "I know you two enjoy loafing as much as anybody and you're not obliged to accept, but would you be willing to help out and take the lead on this? I can't give it much time because I'm working on an assignment for the U.S. Treasury just now." Leo and Rookie agreed enthusiastically, but Leo asked, "Uncle Amerigo, in another coincidence, Rookie and I ran into a friend who helped us prevent a crisis up in Massachusetts last year. Could she join us if she has time?" "Sure, no problem. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 10 in the morning, and we'll stop for your friend en route to the chocolate factory." Leo and Rookie jumped into Amerigo's big black sedan, excited because they knew its normal appearance hid every imaginable gadget and weapon. After they greeted each other, Amerigo said, "Rookie, I'm sure you remember Elaine Merck. She's my friend from New York whose company services the International Space Station. Besides building rockets, she also builds electric cars, and she gave me a new feature for old Blackie here. Now, Blackie can drive itself. I'll leave Blackie with you and Leo for use on this assignment. Just don't take it airborne, and just don't fire any of its weapons until I can train you." 10 minutes later, they picked up Tess, introduced her to Amerigo, and headed east towards Central Florida's lakes and swamps. Amerigo turned off the highway at the sign for Gator Chocolates. He crossed a bridge over one of the ubiquitous swampy waterways, stopped on a patch of dry land that held a small factory, and parked in front. Ricky commented, "This is the first time I've been on an island in a swamp." A workman dashed from the factory, welcomed them, escorted them to a corner office on the ground floor, tapped and opened the door. A cheerful man with a white beard came around his desk and said, "Thanks for coming, Amerigo. I appreciate it. And please introduce me to your team." Amerigo made the introductions, pointed out that the 3 young defenders would lead the assignment, and then asked, "So, Neil, could you relate what's happening right from the beginning?" Certainly. The evening shift foreman phoned me 4 days ago and said my quality control department had rejected the night's entire chocolate blend because its sugar content was virtually 0 and it was bitter. Of course, I inquired about any hiccups in the process and whether the raw sugar had been tested before it being added. He assured me and added that there had been no anomalies in the cocoa roasting and grinding process and said he had personally supervised each step. Well, this was very unsettling, and I immediately phoned my consulting chemist. We both rushed to the factory and analyzed the raw sugar in the mixing room. The bags hadn't been opened, and they looked just fine. But sampling showed the craziest thing. A molecule of sucrose, that's the scientific name for sugar, is composed of 12 atoms of carbon, 22 atoms of hydrogen, and 11 atoms of oxygen. But those in the bags had only 2 hydrogen atoms instead of 22. I was about to call my sugar supplier and chew them out, but decided first to check that the chocolate bars that had been processed, just to see if they'd been came out well. They'd been tested and packaged and stacked right near where the sugar was stored. I ripped open a carton and tasted one, and it was bitter. This was crazy because our records showed it tested perfectly at every step of its production. I ran out to the loading dock to check other bars from the same batch that were waiting there for shipment. I tested one. Hey, it tasted perfect. The only difference between that one and the bitter one was where it had been stored after it was wrapped. The chemist, the foreman, and I know it was nighttime, but we were totally flummoxed, so we just decided to sleep on it. I drove back to the factory before dawn, and just before I entered the driveway, a truck pulled out. It had a tank on the back and a long sprayer, like those the county uses for mosquito control. I assumed it was a night shift worker turning and heading back to the base or something, so I hustled straight to my office and found a note taped to my door. Neil took a sheet of paper from his desk drawer and held it up. This thing's awkward to read, but it says, "To guarantee the future satisfaction of your Gator chocolate customers, consider investing cash to improve your quality." Well, that convinced me our production was okay and some outsider had sabotaged our process, so I called the sheriff's office. A cruiser arrived quickly and the sheriff's deputies sped through the security camera footage. He checked the entire interior of the building for the previous 3 days, and the only unusual thing on the tape was that spray truck driver who was walking up the corridor to my office, typing the note and leaving. He hadn't entered the mixing room and wasn't close enough to sabotage the chocolate. The sheriff brought in his own chemist, interviewed the sugar supplier, tested his products, found they were satisfactory. Hey, and he said there was nothing more he could do. I challenged him. I was sure the extortion note proved a nasty plan was afoot, but in his view, the note was not a specific threat and could have come from an unhappy customer concerned about quality. Amerigo, I know you don't normally deal with small-time criminal extortion, but this business is my life, and I don't know where to turn for help. Amerigo nodded, and his expression showed worry for his friend. He asked, "Did your camera get that truck's license plate or an image of the driver?" Neil shook his head, saying, "The guy wore a wide-brimmed hat, and there's no way to identify him. Oh, and sadly, we don't have cameras in the parking lot." Amerigo went on, "May I see the extortion note?" Neil handed him a sheet, and Amerigo noted it was made by taping letters and words cut from newspapers and magazines. And he said, "The writer of this didn't want to have it traced back to him. I get it that the sheriff couldn't pursue this without more evidence, but this is enough for us. Neil, these 3 defenders are on the case now. We'll be back in touch soon." Neil Hanlon, the president of Gator Chocolate, thanked him, gave them each a chocolate bar from this morning's good batch, and they headed back to Fort Myers. Rookie studied his bar's metallic wrapper, opened it, and chomped. This Gator bar is crockalicious." In the front seat for the ride home, and Amerigo asked her, "What's your first impression of the situation?" "Well, I'm putting some thoughts together, but for now, I'll defer to the back seat." Leo immediately said, "We have to catch the criminals, but we also need to figure out the novel technology they used. If we can't identify it and explain it, we'll never convince the jury to convict them. The mysteries are how they alter the sugar and chocolate without disturbing their packaging. And how could they do it without being at the scene of the crime?" Rookie added, "Since we have no evidence of chemicals or catalysts being introduced or heat or cold being applied, chemistry might not be able to solve the mystery. We may need to get into physics and maybe some arcane aspect of physics." Tess's eyes flashed. She looked toward Amerigo and then turned toward the back seat. "Now, let me add my thoughts. I need to start with the mystery astronomers have been dealing with, so please bear with me. Dark matter, stuff that's invisible both to our eyes and to scientists' instruments, appears to account for 80% of the mass of the universe." Amerigo shook his head and said, "Hey, that mystery makes the one we're dealing with seem petty." "Yes," Tess replied, "but the two may be connected. So far, astronomers have put forth 2 theories to explain dark matter. One is machos, that's massive, astrophysical, compact halo objects. Machos are invisible but massive objects such as black holes. But there are not enough machos in the universe to explain the 80% number of dark matter. Beside that, giant, distant, invisible objects like these machos can't be pertinent to our chocolate mystery. But the second dark matter theory just might help us. It contends the majority of dark matter is composed of wimps. That stands for weakly interacting massive particles. They may be like the protons, neutrons, and electrons that make up normal visible matter, but different in some fundamental ways. Now, while wimps have yet to be proven real or detected here on Earth, anomalies in the way the Milky Way move, at least parts of the Milky Way move through space, make some astronomers believe clusters of wimps are out there and they may be the cause. Rookie said, "So, what we thought of as empty space may hold a colossal number of particles called wimps, and they may be similar but different from the particles we know make up atoms in everyday matter." Tess said, "Yes, and just as normal matter includes protons, neutrons, and other particles that themselves are composed of even smaller ones called quarks, there may be many versions of wimps. I researched baryonic particles. That's the term for all those various particles in normal matter. And when I extended my thinking to dark matter wimps, I realized the universe may well contain a continuum of known and unknown particles, and perhaps many varieties of wimps. Now, a few days before we met on the beach, I theorized a particle that bridges between our baryonic particles and wimps, and physically could interact with both. It could push around the chemistry of normal matter, so I named it the bully. I'm sure a bully would make light work of a candy wrapper on its way to beating up the sugar in the chocolate bar. Whoo! Leo said. Undetectable particles that can alter chemistry. Let's pursue that possible solution to the mystery while we work out a way to trap the criminals themselves. Brava! Bravo! Amerigo said. You defenders are firing on all cylinders, and I'm sad to say I need to put most of my time for the next few days into the U.S. Treasury Department, but I will contribute Blackie here to the cause and leave it with Rookie and Leo. Also, if you need to take a long trip, ring me and I'll send my jet to over to the Fort Myers airport. The pilot's a good guy, and he'll take you wherever you want to go. Chapter 3. Exotic problem, practical solution. The three defenders spent the remainder of the afternoon around the pool, reviewing the few facts available and exploring the possibility of something less exotic than bullies destroying gator chocolate sugar. Tess argued that no known gas could have penetrated the multi-layer packaging of sugar bags or the cardboard cases and metallic wrappers of finished chocolate bars, and she said, our normal subatomic particles could easily enter the packaging, but science has never heard of them changing the chemistry of something like sugar. My money says dark matter bullies are responsible. And if I am right, there are only two ways to protect Neil and the others these criminals might go after. One is to find an anti-bully particle that can annihilate the criminals' bullies. The second is to trap and sequester the bullies they've got. But my friends, I'm just a kid like yourselves, and I don't know if either one of those ideas is feasible. Rookie asked, Oh, who might know? And Tess said, Gee, the only place with experts in all related fields is CERN in Switzerland. Do you have a contact there? Oh, I'm afraid not. Rookie said, Pops does, and I'm sure he'd make introductions for us. Do you have your passport here with you in Florida? When Tess nodded, Rookie added, Next step is to see if Amerigo's jet is free. Leo said, Then go for it, you two. I'll stay here. I'll see if any law enforcement agencies have a lead on the criminals, and I'll see if I can find a way to trap the bullies just in case. CERN says that's our best approach. When Pops returned home that evening, Rookie told him their plan, and Pops confirmed Tess's research. The European Space Agency's Gaia probe had produced a 3D map of the Milky Way, and it showed what could be interpreted as clumps of dark matter, possibly wimps. He said the possibility of wimps being on Earth and Tess's theory of bully particles were worthwhile ideas to talk out with CERN, and he agreed to make the introductions for them. Rookie then phoned Amerigo and arranged for the flight to Switzerland. The next morning, Pops called a friend at CERN, handed Rookie the phone, and he laid out the questions Tess and he wanted guidance on. The chief scientist there was intrigued by the theoretical and practical questions about wimps and bullies, and said he'd pull together a panel to meet with the two defenders. Tess and Rookie accelerated skyward only an hour later. Leo called the Fort Myers police and the Lee County Sheriff's Office to see if they had any active investigations of an extortion or destruction of sugar or anything else. But he came up dry on that. The closest thing the police had to a case like the Gator chocolate extortion was a citizen complaint about a white cloud over a sugarcane field. But they closed the matter when the cloud turned out to simply be smoke from sugarcane waste being burned following its harvest in preparation for the next season's crop. Leo did make more progress on the second task he'd taken on, that is, developing a method to trap and transport bullies in case CERN advised them to follow that path. He started by drawing on his earlier research into two British professors' Nobel Prize-winning creation of graphene. Those are sheets of single atom thick crystallized carbon. These amazing sheets became electrical superconductors when one sheet was laid on another at a 1.1 degree offset angle. And then they became super insulators when the angle was simply changed to 1.2 degrees. Before leaving for Florida, Leo had packed several sheets of graphene into a suitcase along with the inventions he normally carried in case extraterrestrials threatened. He carefully connected the sheets into a seamless, secure sack, just a bit smaller than the 50-pound sugar sacks of the chocolate factory. His greatest attention was on sealing the bottom of his super-insulator sack because high-mass wimps like Tess's bullies would naturally just settle down there. He made it to bed only at 4 a.m., and he was groggy when the phone rang at dawn. Chapter 4. A Serpent Slithers. Leo muttered a greeting into the phone and heard an agitated Neil say, "I just received a call from a man calling himself Mr. P and saying he hoped I'd gathered investment funds because he'd be arriving at the factory at 6 a.m. tomorrow. He'll present me with a consulting contract and expects me to sign it and deliver $1 million in Bitcoin. And listen to this. He'll come prepared to demonstrate the type of things he could prevent from going wrong." Oh, that's a threat that'll keep wrecking my chocolate, I'm sure of it. Leo, what should I do? By now, Leo was wide awake and said, "Neil, we're ready to deal with this extortionist. I'll come to the factory later to install a device, and I'll be back tomorrow by 5 a.m. I want you to have only a very small vat of chocolate in process, and a few bags of sugar, and very few gator bars in the mixing room. Do not, I repeat, not prepare the Bitcoin payment." Now, the factory was outside of Fort Myers city limits, so he next called the Lee County Sheriff and asked him to prepare roadblocks, but keep them hidden until after 6 a.m. Then he texted Rookie to find out about his progress. Rookie texted back, "Experts agree bullies might exist and affect sugar chemistry. Tess and I will arrive in Florida at the end of the afternoon. We'll take a taxi home." Well, Leo got back, ate a quick breakfast, and put the final touches on his bully trap. He carefully lowered it into Blackie's trunk. Then he sat himself behind the steering wheel and said in a normal voice, "Blackie, take me to the Gator Chocolate Factory." With help from Neil's maintenance crew, Leo was able to fit the graphene bully trap into a discarded sugar sack, and he installed it with help of a long ladder. He walked to Neil's office, reviewed his plan, and when Neil nodded and gave a thumbs up, he said, "Okay, we're ready to rock and roll. Neil, we're going to nail those crooks tomorrow morning." Blackie navigated the drive home. Leo walked himself through every detail of his plan a final time, and then he took a much-needed nap. Tess and Rookie entered through the side door, urgently wanting to know Leo's progress and explain the nuances of wimp theory they learned at CERN. Their minds were fired up until they sniffed the air. Then the aroma of pancakes frying in the kitchen enveloped them, and their interest changed entirely. Leo greeted them with, "Hey, nice to see you guys. Hope your trip was good. Hungry, I bet." When he saw head nods and wide smiles, he said, "Just take a seat. I already have 3 big stacks in the oven, and this is the last panful. Rook, would you grab the butter from the fridge?" There was no talk of science. There was no talk of criminals. Only talk of the great meals travelers had had in Geneva. Until Leo said. Tess, something has been rattling around in my head all day. I know what macho stands for, and I know what wimps are. But what's the acronym behind bully? Now that's the only pertinent question the scientists at CERN did not ask. Leo, ordinarily I'd have to charge a conference speaker's fee to answer that question. But since your pancakes are so good, this will be a freebie. Rookie rolled his head from shoulder to shoulder and rolled his eyes at the same time. Tess watched his performance, smiled, and continued. I had to stretch to come up with something in the same genre as macho and wimp, but here it is. A bully is a particle that's big, undetectable, and likely linked to Yoda. Rookie put down his fork and clapped. Brava, brava! A virtuoso performance of acronym building. But oh, don't go any further. Keep us in suspense about how Yoda uses undetectable particles. Leo asked what they had learned at CERN, and Rookie said, Let me start with a quick summary. We met with 6 people on the cutting edge of dark matter research, and their advice for protecting Gator chocolate was to try to capture any offending particles before they came into contact with the chocolate. Tess added, They agree the Milky Way mapping may indicate clumps of wimps in space, but they're sorely disappointed they found none on Earth because they want to smash a wimp in their particle collider and study the remnants. They found my theory of bully particle to be plausible, and we promised to notify them if we succeed in trapping them or other wimps. As for finding bully antimatter, it's not so much. We've struck out. Scientists theorize that unlike protons in normal matter, which have corresponding antiprotons, there is no anti-wimp particle. Too bad. I'd hope anti-bullies would be a quick and easy way to protect Neil. Leo raised his hands and said, Well, thank you both. I understand that coming back without anti-bullies is disappointing for you, but it's lucky for me. I had to guess about what CERN would recommend and put most of my time into building a bully trap. And fortunately, it's ready to go. Now for my big news. The extortionists are coming back tomorrow morning. Ricky blurted, Woohoo! So it's game on. Leo said, Yep, I'm going to the factory for 5 in the morning, and I have a proposal for you two. Rookie said, Spit it out, bro. I'm anxious to get at it. Tess pumped her fist in the idea of supporting this. Leo said, Okay, expect the extortionist to show at 6 o'clock and to have his supply of bullies with him. If he lets them loose, my job is to trap them before they do any harm and grab the rest of his supply. Now the sheriff will block their escape by road, but we need to prevent their escape through the swamp. Can you two take on swamp duty? Tess said, Whoa! I can't think of a better use for my fan boat. Rook, are you game to fight in the water? Absolutely. And the plan was cooked. Mom and Pops came home late. They were tired from a tough day and heading for bed when Leo caught them and asked if they could join him in the morning at the chocolate factory. Pops explained they couldn't because their own operation was kicking off then. Leo phoned Amerigo but learned he also had a commitment in the morning. Hey, the 3 were on their own.